My name is Gata. Welcome to my making journey. I am filming from Valparaiso, Chile in South America. This is part 2 of my 2-part tutorial for the KangaRoo Foldable Market Bag. You can find the pattern on my website, erik.com, and this is a 2-part tutorial. This is the second part. If you haven't seen the first part, there's a link below where you can access it. So what is this bag? If you don't know this bag, this is a project for beginner crochet. Maybe like not the very beginning project, but close enough. I think that you can totally be a brand new crocheter and still make this, which is why I made the tutorial, to clear some issues, some questions you might have. In part 1, I show you a little bit of the mechanics of how to build the bag, how to use a magic ring, why we use it, etc., etc., how to crochet in the round. And in this second part, we'll finish making the bag, then making the mesh of the bag, which is built, this is all in one piece basically, and then finally adding the handle, which is very easy. So this is your bag. Now, if you haven't, as I said, if you haven't checked the first part, feel free to check it below. If you're ready for the second one, with no further ado. Oh, before we start, I just wanted to show you how beautiful Valparaiso woke up after the rain. All right, so now with no further ado, part 2. So I want to show you something that, if you're a complete beginner, might happen to you, and that is tension. Here, interestingly enough, I made the same amount of rows for each one of these pieces, but somehow this became much tighter than this one, even though I used the same size crochet. So if this happens to you, you have 2 options. The first one is to make the big one smaller, or you make the smaller one bigger. It doesn't really matter, but I wanted to just point this out so that you don't worry about it. It's not like an exact science. The important thing is that you end up with a pouch that is big enough to hold your bag. So I am going to make the bigger one smaller because I think this size should be large enough to hold the rest of the bag in. So that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to undo some of this. I'm just going to quickly undo one row and see where that leaves me. I'm gonna make sure not to undo too much. All right, so now we'll compare them. And now they're the exact same size, or just about. What you're going to do is you're going to put them right sides together with the tops or the closures facing up. And then you're going to simple crochet 4 of the sides of the hexagon. Why 4? Because this is your pouch, and we're gonna close that. We're gonna build the mesh of the bag on this side, but then when we put it away, we're gonna turn this inside out. And so your pouch needs an opening. So that's what we're going to do. We're gonna leave 2 open so that you can stuff the bag through that opening when you turn it inside out, if that makes sense. So the pattern calls for 64 simple crochets, which is 16 times 4. But if you had my same issue with tension, if you decided to use a different size crochet, if you decided to use a different size yarn, you might end up with fewer rounds than I made or more rounds than I made, in which case you're gonna end up with fewer stitches on these 4 sides or more stitches on the 4 sides. What I'm trying to say is this is not an exact science. Don't worry about it. The important thing is that you're gonna close 4 sides of your hexagon. Now, one thing that can happen, or a couple of things to pay attention to. The first thing is that because they're both facing inwards, the V's of your hexagons are going to be facing in different directions, which can make it a little bit harder when you find them to close the 4 sides. So that's number 1. Number 2 is if you happen to You know, if it happens to you, if what happened to me, damn, that was hard. If what happens to me happens to you, which is, if the tension on one side is looser or tighter than the other side, and you end up with more stitches on one side, you're going to have extra stitches on one side, 4 extra stitches, which means when you close, you're going to have an extra stitch that you're going to want to skip, so that you don't end up with 4 stitches, extra stitches at the end. So you're going to want to skip 1 stitch in each one of the sides to sort of balance it out. It's not a big deal. You're not going to be able to see it. Just remember that if you get to the end and you have an extra stitch and you don't know why, you can just continue by skipping it. Another option, if you get confused about the V's, is to count backwards. Put a marker so you know exactly where you have to go, or until when you have to stitch each time you stitch. Those would be my words of wisdom and advice to the very beginners. So we're going to do that. We're going to put them together. You're going to grab the piece that you are working on. Remember, the second hexagon, you do not need to cut your thread when you're done, because we're going to continue building the bag right away. So you're going to line them up. That was a very enthusiastic up. I like to put my ends away where I can't see them. You're going to line them up, and then you're going to stitch in the next stitch that you're supposed to, which would be this one here, and this one here. So we're going to do that. And you're going to go through the entire V in order to do your simple crochet. Why are you going to go through the entire V and not in some of the loops? Simply because it makes a firmer bag. Just because of that. You can choose to do just the inner loops if you want. I like to do all 4. I just think it's better. But if you think not, then feel free to change that. All right, so I just did the first of the 4 sides that I'm going to close. And here I am stopping to show you what you may encounter if you have a different number of stitches in your hexagons. So for this hexagon, I have 1 stitch left, and then the one in between the 2 stitches, the point, the vertex of the hexagon. But on this one, I'm at the vertex already, so I have an extra stitch on this side. So what I'm going to do is just enter in the first one with my crochet, and then for the second one, I'm just going to skip that stitch and go to the next one. And that way I make sure that the number stays balanced. I'm not going to leave those extra stitches at the end, because what I'm going to end up with is an opening here of 4 stitches, and I don't want that. So instead of that, I am skipping a stitch on the side that has an extra stitch. You can't tell, it looks totally fine. So now I have 3 more sides to go, and I'm going to encounter that problem. Sorry, I was off camera. I'm going to go through the other 3 sides, and I'm going to have that problem again here, here, and here. So I'm going to repeat what I just did 3 more times to make sure that the sides are balanced. I've gone and reinforced or closed 4 of the sides from this vertex to this one. And now I am going to continue with the rest of the pouch. Now, this is where this is the outer side. The inner part is where we're going to continue building the mesh. But before we do that, we're going to reinforce the last 2 sides of each of the hexagons, and we're going to do that to build a buttonhole. So what we're going to do is we're going to just continue working on one of the sides. I like to go in the direction that I would go normally when I knit. So I'm going to choose that side first instead of going backwards on this side. So I'm going to choose that side. I'm going to get to the vertex, and then I'm going to do, the pattern calls for 16 stitches, right? If you're following the pattern as is, 8 chain stitches to make a loophole for the button, and then 16 chain stitches this way, and then 32 around this way. But you already know that one of my sides is bigger than the other one. I don't remember which side that is. So basically what you're really doing is you're simple crocheting all the way to the center of the vertex, then doing as many chain stitches as you want. If you have a really large button that you're going to put right smack in the middle, you're going to need a really long loop. If you're going to do a rather small button right here, you don't need that much of a loop. So I'm calling for 8 stitches, but you can do however many you want. So we're going to go ahead and do that. So here we go. We're going to do, this is where I'm at. So I'm going to go to the next one and just continue simple crocheting until I reach that vertex. Remember, try to keep your tension hopefully as loose as you've already been crocheting so that it doesn't pucker. Okay, so I'm at the vertex, and now I'm going to do 8 chain stitches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to go back into the vertex stitch, close it with a simple crochet, and then continue simple crocheting down that side. All right, so there is the loop. When I get to the end, all I'm going to do is simple crochet to the very last stitch that I can crochet in, or that I can get into. And then I simply just hop over to the other side and continue simple crocheting on that side. These threads can all be ignored until these type of threads until we're done and we weave in everything. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all around these 2 sides. Now, why do I do this first? You could do it in this side, that's totally fine. I like to do anything like button loops or buttonholes for sweaters first. I always like to do that side first because I've made the mistake of doing the other side and then totally forgetting to do buttonholes when I finish the second side. So if I get it done right away, then I know that I'm not going to make that mistake. This doesn't work for everybody, but it does work for people that are scattered, aka myself. So now we're going to go and finish this and knit all the way to the end. All right, so we have gone over the second side, and now we are, when you get to the end, just simple crochet the very last stitch, and then you are ready to continue stitching. Now, I like to close this by going into the closest stitch on the other side and doing a slip stitch. So now we have our pouch. Want to show it to you. It's like that. Here is the little button loop for the button. Once the mesh bag is in it, it's gonna like get a little chubby, so you can sort of bring it over. I like to put my button pretty close to the outer portion, but maybe you want to do a long loop. That's what I was trying to tell you about before. Now we're gonna go back to where we were, because the mesh bag goes on the inner part of your, the mesh portion goes on the inner part of your bag. So for this part, you're going to continue knitting. You're going to continue knitting all around the hexagon. Now, the only thing that you need to be careful here is that for the open portion, the mesh bag is only going to be knitted or crocheted on the side that does not have the loop, for obvious reasons. If you make the mistake, it won't matter. You could probably do the mesh bag on this side, but it's just easier if you do it on this side. So just pay attention to that. So you're here, we are all here. And I know before I said that I like to go in the direction of the bag, but now that is impossible unless I continue going this way. So I'm going to turn it around and I am going to do the following. The mesh is made by doing chain stitches that are then hooked on every 4 stitches to the base. So it's going to look like a doily. So we're going to start with our chain with 7 chain stitches, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I'm going to count 4 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, and on the 4th, I'm going to go in and I am going to slip stitch. You could also do a simple crochet, but I just do a slip stitch. And you're going to repeat that all around your work. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Whoops, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so I've gone all around the 4 sides that are closed, and now I'm approaching the opening. I'm going to pull that thread out. It's kind of hard to tell how many stitches there are, but you can just gauge the distance. So 1, 2, let's say there's a 3 here, and this one would be stitch 4. And I'm putting it, remember, in the side that does not have the button loop. So 4. Oh, that was way too tight. There we go. And I continue to close this first row. I go over the opening that I'm going to work on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4.
So if you have more or fewer stitches than called for in the pattern for whatever reason, if you made a bigger pouch or used a smaller thread, then you might have problems here with it not coinciding with how many stitches you have and what I call for in the pattern.
So if I knew how many I have here, say I only have 6, I have 3 and 3, I can either choose to do 2 shorter loops, or maybe I can go back and undo some and sort of balance them out somehow. It just all depends on how worried you are about perfection. 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to close that. We're going to continue making this a spiral. So from here, I'm going to do 7 chain stitches, 7 chain stitches, and instead of closing it here, I'm going to grab the middle of this loop. So this is how it's going to look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to go in here. You could potentially go through the stitch, but I just like to go under the chain altogether and then do my simple stitch. With that, I have turned this level, quote unquote, into a spiral.
And I'll continue doing this until I have about 33 or so rounds.
So once you get to the end, you're going to do your last loop. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You're going to come to close it. And now I'm just going to pull this. This is for the very beginners. To finish, just pull this, leave a tail, and then you're going to weave that tail into the rest of the bag. Hi everyone, so we're back. It's been a few days since I last filmed. Lots of things have happened. I just didn't have time, but that's okay. I just did a slip knot. We are finishing our bag, and now what we need to do is a cord which will function as a handle. In my pattern, I call for about 70 centimeters, which is like a little bit less than 28 inches, but you can do it however long you want. Yeah, the handle should be comfortable for you. Just remember that if you make it too long, when the bag hangs with things in it, it might be a little too long and you might touch the floor and whatnot. So Just mind that. Then we're going to put a simple stitch in each one of the chain stitches that we just did. So you're going to go all the way back to the beginning. I am putting the crochet, this is for the beginners, through the entire V, if you will. But because that is hard to do, what I do is I look for the bottom part. So on a crochet stitch, you have those V's, and then on the bottom you have this sort of loop. That's the side, right? These loops. So that's what I look for. I just go straight into that loop. It's easier than finding the V's. And I will see you when I have the whole chain finished. Okay, so now we have both pieces, and we are going to weave in the handle of the cord that we made to serve as a handle here. So you have two options to do this. One is simply to basically go in a spiral and go into each one of these loops. You can go in from the front, from the back, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that you are consistent so it doesn't look weird. Yeah, so that's one option. The other option is to also go in and out, weaving in and out, but through the front of and back of the intersection of these lines, or basically where you caught your loops. So that way. So what we're going to do now is I am going to cut here and leave a long tail, and with that tail I'm going to weave in the end to close this cord into the first stitch, the first V, right? And I'm going to bring it together like so and go into the last stitch, into that V, and tighten. And then I'm going to do the same with the bottom part, with the loops that we saw earlier. So I'm going to do one loop and then the other loop. And then I just do that a couple more times, back and forth, going into the loop, just kind of randomly. And then I just start poking basically anywhere. I'm sure there's a more, there's a better way to do this, but this is how I do it, and it always works. So if it works for me, I think it's good enough. So there we go. As you can see, it's hard to notice it, so it doesn't matter how perfect it is. And then I'm just gonna make a knot. There we go.
Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I hope this tutorial has been useful to you. I hope you enjoyed the bag. I hope you like this pattern. If you didn't like the video, I hope you like the next one. If you did like the video, I would really appreciate you hitting the like button below. And if you want to see other videos like this one, if you want to check out my sewing videos or my other knitting videos, or a little bit about Valparaiso, which I always add into my videos, feel free to subscribe and check out my other videos. Thank you so much. See you later. Ciao.